YouTube, what's happening? We're back with some music related stuff. As I said, this channel is not going to just be talking about metal or punk or black metal or death metal. We're going to talk about all kinds of music in my collection. And today we're going to talk about a band called 16 Horsepower. They formed in 1992 in Los Angeles. This is their debut album, Sackcloth and Ashes, on A&M Records. This band was a three-piece, at least in the studio it was a three-piece. I believe live they performed with 4 and sometimes 5 and 6 people. They would have guests on cello and acoustic instruments that would join in depending on what what venue that they were playing and whatnot. That's the band there from their debut album. Guy right here, it was kind of the main guy, David Eugene Edwards, on guitars, banjoline, banjo, mandolin, all kinds of acoustic stringed instruments. He's the lead vocalist and the main writer, if not, I believe he wrote predominantly all of the material. On bass we had Pascal Humbert, and on drums we had Jean-Yves Tola, I believe the guy's name was. Yes, he also played piano as well too. This band ran from 1992 until 2005. David Eugene Edwards was in a band called the Denver Gentlemen in the late 80s into the 90s, and he was from the Denver area. His grandfather was a revivalist preacher, so he came from a very religious background, very steeped in the church, and the lyrics throughout most of his material are very fire and brimstone, redemption, damnation, very dark, haunting sort of lyrics, angry at times. And how I found out about these guys was back in the early 90s, mid 90s, when we still had brick and mortar stores, which, those are kind of a dying breed at this point in time. I think there's one in my town now, a town of 76,000 people. I think there's one brick and mortar store left, and I believe there is one mall store, but I haven't been out there in 2 or 3 years, and it sucked when I went out there. I hated walking in that place, and they rarely had anything I wanted. KYB or whatever the hell the name of the place is, I don't even know. It's been so long since I've been there. But back in the 90s, my favorite place to shop was a place called XYZ Music. And what was cool about this place is you could go in and he'd have all the CDs in a little rack, a flip rack that you could flip the CDs, to see what was in there. They were all open like this. They weren't in shrink wrap. The CDs were out of them, like in this case. I think I'd probably have them in one of my car carriers here. It's probably in there somewhere. Oops, just dropped them everywhere. But you could then take your case up to Paul, the guy that owned the place, and he'd jump into his little filing rack and pull out the CD from this and give it to you, and you could throw it on a little Walkman CD player, throw the headphones on, and you could, if they weren't super crazy busy, you could sit there and listen to 5 or 6 CDs and buy what you wanted or not. And anyways, I walked in there mid 90s, 96 obviously, because I got this right after it came out, and this was playing. And at that point in time I was listening to Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, a lot of that 90s grunge metal, grunge rock was kind of my jam. Of course I was into death metal very lightly, and I was still into my hair metal. Yeah, I was. Rat fucking rule. Anyway, this was playing, and what really grabbed me about this was David Eugene Edwards' vocals were just hauntingly otherworldly. They just sounded menacing and frightening and unhinged at times to a degree. And by that I don't mean Attila Mayhem style vocals. I just mean that there was something about this guy, the timbre of his voice, the anger in his voice, the intensity in his voice that really grabbed me. So I grabbed this, threw it on the player to listen through the headphones, and I was sold. Really, really, really kick-ass album. What do they sound like? I don't know that they really sound like anybody, but they what they're called on Wikipedia, there's all kinds of descriptors for what their music is. Alt country, American Gothic, which I think is probably the best description that I could ascribe to, is that there's just this Gothic quality, this harkening back to like the old country players, the Dust Bowl era music of like Woody Guthrie and Hank Williams Sr. This is not standard country. This is not Johnny Cash Ring of Fire type country at all. And it's definitely a million miles away from America type commercial country. It's nothing like that in the remotest. But there's a lot of bluegrass instrumentation in here, mandolas, mandolins, banjoline, like I said, banjo, a lot of banjo on this first album. You got killer songs like I Seen What I Saw, which is just so great way to lead an album off. It is just so viscerally scary sounding, actually. The Black Soul Choir, which was covered by Devil Driver on one of their 2000 maybe early 2000 albums, mid 2000 albums. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not a Devil Driver fan, but they did. Dez is apparently a huge fan of 16 horsepower. Again, 3-piece, and man, they're just a powerful sounding band for a 3-piece. I never got to see these guys live, unfortunately. They went from 92 to 2005. In 2005, they split up, and David Eugene Edwards started another band that got a little bit more religious and a little bit more deeper into the folky sound. It's called Woven Hand. I have 2 other CDs of theirs I have not been able to locate. It's good. I don't like it as much. I did get to see Woven Hand in September of... In fact, it may have been the last gig I saw before COVID hit. I think September of 19 I saw these guys down in Philly. They were kick-ass. They went... After the first 3 albums, they went a lot more punk, but there was a lot more punk ethos and a little bit more rockabilly sort of kind of to the vibe, but heavy. One of the hallmarks of 16 horsepower, other than the banjoline and acoustic side of things, is David Eugene uses a semi-hollow body. I don't remember what guitar he uses. Might have been a Framus, might have been a Gibson, an old Gibson. But he uses a ton of reverb and delay and the Bigsby tremolo arm. You get that really wobbly, warbly, tremolo that sounds so sweet. Guy just has a really unique playing style and a unique tone to his guitar playing, and especially his voice. Again, going back to what really jumped out at me about this band, it was David Eugene Edwards' voice and his structuring of the songs, that they didn't really sound like country songs. They sounded like more like unhinged revivalist, almost like hymns, religious hymns, with him kind of going ballistic over top of them with his choruses and verse, the way he would sing the verses and choruses. This album was my introduction, as I said, in '96 on A&M Records. Fantastic album. I recommend it to everybody. But they did put out five albums and 1 live, 4 studios, and some demos and some EPs. I do not have the original EP. I've never actually even seen it or looked for it. The next album in 1997 was Low Estate. This one has Brimstone Rock, which was, you could tell A&M were pushing them a little bit in a direction to try to go a little bit more mainstream, to sound a little bit more radio friendly. That song in particular is pretty radio friendly. But most of the stuff like Ditch Digger, The Denver Grab, Sack of Religion was a big one off this album, Phyllis Ruth and Black Lung, they're still very much in the vein of the first album. Very, Americana Gothic and very dark, very evil sounding. Next up was the third album, which was out in 2000. This one was out of print for a long time. I remember grabbing this in like 2013 off eBay for $10 and being overjoyed. I've since run into a couple of other copies out in the wild for $2 or $3. And these can be had usually pretty cheaply. But this one for a while was out of print, and it was going for stupid money on eBay. And I just happened into this, and I was super psyched. Probably my personal favorite. This album is fairly acoustic in nature, but it's there's something about this one that just is so dark and so bleak sounding. The lead off track, Clogger, was the only one I ever saw a video for them on MTV, believe it or not, or whatever was back there, Much Music, or I don't remember, but I don't think I saw it online. I think I saw it on TV. But Clogger is very rocky. It does have a bit of a southern rock edge to it. But the rest of the album, like Wayfaring Stranger, that's a beautiful, beautiful traditional ballad that they take on. Cinder Alley is gorgeous. Burning Bush, fantastic. Silver Saddle's probably my favorite song on here. Splinters, so fucking dark. The guitar on this is so, it's just so meaty and visceral, but yet haunting and ethereal. I know all those descriptors that everybody that listens to this kind of music always wants to throw out there. This album rules. Either the first one or this one would be my entry point for this band as a recommendation. Horse was a live set from 1998 in Denver, I believe. I'm sorry, the Bataclan in Paris in October. This is pretty much, American Wheeze, which is was one of the big songs off the first album, where he's playing a accordion, and it's pretty much an all accordion song. That's one of the other instruments that they use in their pretty large, plays a large role in a lot of their music, is the accordion, but it's done in a rock and roll way. I don't know how you can do rock and roll with the accordion, but you can kind of do it. If you've ever seen the Rush video for when I think it was Snakes and Arrows, when Rash, the band, is playing on the mini stage in the bar that Geddy and Alex and Neo are playing in, they play Spirit of the Radio on accordion. It's fucking badass. So you can do rock and roll with an accordion. But Horse is good. That's a good live set. Their final album in 2002, 2002, was called Folklore. And looking at this one, I remember I got this at Amoeba in LA when I was out there in 2005, I think, chasing one of my favorite bands up and down the coast. This album is much, much more acoustic based. It's a lot more low key than the other ones. There's not as much varied instrumentation on it. Probably my least favorite, but still a good one. And then finally, Olden, which is the Night Owl Sessions from '93, the Kerr Macy Sessions from '94, and a live set in Denver in '94. Just a lot of extraneous material that they came up with as their final kind of swan song release. And the only other thing I have from them is, and I don't know when this was put out. Let me see. I'm cheating a little bit here. They had the 60. Yeah, this was out in 2005 as well. This is called 16 Horsepower. Kind of hard to see. 2 discs. There were a couple videos on here. The videos, I think, of Black Soul Choir and the track Hall, and then also Cloggers on here as well. There's also some live material and some interviews with David. Well, I think the interviews are with everyone. I didn't look at this in a long, long time, but I think this is kind of rare to find these days. Probably not worth much, but this was distributed by Smooch Records. Okay. One thing to note about these guys is that their popularity was much, much greater in Europe than it was in the United States. I'm actually surprised they were able to get 5 albums released, because I just don't recall them having a super high profile in the music industry. Although they were on A&M, which was a pretty big label back then. I mean, Soundgarden was on that label at that point in time. So, and A&M had a reputation for trying to develop other styles of music as opposed to just pigeonholing with one. But so yeah, that's something a little different. If anybody in my audience is into alt, gothic, bluegrass, metal country, it's not metal, but dark country, man, this band fucking does it for me. I don't really have anything else in my collection like this. I have very, very few country things. I have a little bit of maybe, some bluegrassy type stuff. I do have some Johnny Cash. I'm trying to look at my box sets that are sitting out. Johnny Cash would be probably a little bit of Willie Nelson, the old style stuff, some original Hank Williams I have. But that's about it, man. I mean, there's just not much country, and particularly contemporary country. I fucking hate that shit. This is not that, not even in the same universe, as I said. So if you want to check out something different, something a little bit off your usual radar as far as what you listen to, and if you like to expand your boundaries a little bit on what you listen to, I'm suggesting check out 16 Horsepower, because that band is fucking cool. You're not gonna hear many other bands that are like them, and if you do, drop me a comment below that you checked them out or that you dug into them, and let me know what you think of them. All right, more stuff coming, so stay tuned. Thanks for joining me.